I thank you very much for tuning into That Will Never Work podcast. Most businesses don't have a sales problem or a marketing problem. They have a communication problem. And that is between two teams that are supposed to be possibly on the same side. And it is silently costing them probably everything. So our guest today, he who has spent well over 30 years selling something that most people say couldn't be sold. Radio airtime, literally selling things that we don't think we could sell, which is air. And doing a soul built a masterclass in alignment, strategy, and the exact questions that unlock revenue that is already sitting inside your business waiting to be found. Let's talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
So our guest today is a 34-year sales leadership veteran who literally built his entire career selling something you cannot see, touch, or hold. And so rising from the front lines of broadcasting to become a senior vice president, a market president at the nation's largest media companies, including iHeart, Audacy, and Cumulus Media, where he built iconic Atlanta brands Q99.7 and 99X. Now as the founder of the Strategic Growth Design and a Fractional Chief Sales Officer, Sean partners with small and medium-sized businesses to dismantle the costly wall between their marketing and sales team. Sean, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for coming on to the show today.
Maurice, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. So now, Sean, I know I gave the guests a whole lot of information about you, right? And so now let's get into the nitty gritty. You spent over 3 decades selling something that we feel like can't be sold and convincing businesses to invest in something that's invisible, possibly intangible, and impossible to put into their hands. So what did mastering that specific kind of sale teach you about the gap between what a marketing team thinks is communicating and what a sales team is actually hearing when they walk into the room with a prospect?
Yeah. I love to reference back to Peter Drucker because, I don't know, it must have been somewhere in the late 70s, early 80s. He said that the vast majority of businesses have no idea what their customers are buying.
Mm-hmm.
Just no clue. They know what they're selling them, but they had no idea what was motivating the purchase. And, the thing about it is that what you're trying to do is untease what Clayton Christensen calls jobs theory. And the idea is that we don't buy products and services. We hire them to do really specific jobs in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And what the fundamental disconnect that happens between sales and marketing is that the jobs that our products and services are being hired to do are constantly evolving.
Mm.
The sales team is aware of it because they're in front of the client. And if they're listening really carefully, they're understanding how the buyer's needs are evolving,
mm-hmm.
but it never gets communicated back to the marketing team. And so the marketing team is out talking about one job, 2 jobs that are no longer the jobs that are being done.
Mm.
Right? So, when I first started in my radio sales career, there were 5-6 different places you could reach lots and lots of audience. You could buy some radio, buy some TV, some outdoor, newspaper, direct mail, right? There were just a few places to reach lots and lots of audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so what the clients were hiring us for at that moment in time was that they needed access to these large audiences.
Hmm.
They needed to be able to fill the minds of potential consumers with messages that would create trust and credibility. And since we were one of only 5 or 6 places you could do it, that was the fundamental value proposition.
Hmm.
So all of our marketing materials were built around that. Come about 2004, 2005, broadband internet is now ubiquitous.
Mm.
Everybody has access to it. Therefore, we all have access to thousands and thousands of places to aggregate as audiences, to find entertainment, whether it was on YouTube or it was, then on Facebook. Suddenly, advertisers had thousands of places to find thousands and thousands of people, and the value proposition shifted. And we no longer had a monopoly on audience, so we had to shift the value proposition. What were they hiring us to do? Well, I'm an advertiser who understands my message the best and can help me craft that message across all of these thousands of choices. So we changed our entire focus and orientation toward being experts in crafting messages that could be used across any number of media options. And so we began to make ourselves a creative agency rather than just simply peddlers of air, right? But if it's not communicated back to the marketing team that you have fundamentally shifted the value proposition, you're lost.
So I'm going to back up for a second, because I think there's something that's in that point that you just made that I believe could be lost. There is a point in there where you said something about broadband internet, right?
Yep.
And so in that, sometimes we're not aware of how technology plays a role in our marketing or sales, right? And understanding that importance on getting our information and our data, whatever might be, out in a timely manner. So if we're going to go back to dial-up, I mean, it might have taken like 3 days to get an email through, right?
You and I would be nothing but a bunch of pixelated boxes on our screen.
Right. But now we have to shift that idea of how we're getting our information out, because now, as you stated, I'm not only targeting maybe my local market, but now I'm looking at a more maybe regional, even national vibe, let alone global today, right? In mere seconds. So how does that even affect those two teams in their conversations? Because technology is also moving so fast. How do we keep up in those moments?
Yeah, and the thing is that we tend to look at whatever is new technologically as being something that's going to potentially transform our business. And the reality is it doesn't transform it, it exposes it. When you think about AI, right? We all now have the ability to sell at scale by using agentic SDRs, agentic sales development reps, that go out, make connections on our behalf, send out hundreds of emails rather than dozens of emails. Right. We think this is going to be transformative for me. But if the message is not authentic, if the communication is not strategic, if we're not talking to our potential customers about what pains them in the moment, then it's simply going to expose our lack of understanding more quickly and at larger scale. And so the question is, not how fast to move, but whether or not what you are about to scale is smart to scale.
And I think that's because we get so caught up sometimes in looking at what our competitors are doing, and so as you're stating, those individuals that are forward facing or customer facing, right? We hear that feedback instantly. We can see how disgruntled they are. And sometimes that information is not always disseminated back because it could be coming in too fast and heavy. So I used to work in a customer service department in a local insurance company in my corporate America days. And in those moments, I get to hear up front how the customer was totally upset. Now, ultimately, and now that's our external customer. We don't now all of a sudden we have these internal customers, being us, who are now also disgruntled, and maybe those other departments don't necessarily hear what's really going on. And so if you can really explain to us really that barrier, that communication challenge, what is it really costing us in the long term, let alone short term? Because in short term, it could be just employees leaving, But what does it mean long term that we might be missing besides revenue?
Yeah. I want to talk specifically about the B2B space, and I'm going to just take a quick turn for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Most B2B, small and medium-sized business owners in the B2B space think of marketing as a four-letter word. It is a black hole where they throw money and they don't know what's working and what's not working.
Right.
And what they say to themselves is, I don't need to really market my business. That's what I got a sales team for, right? And so their motion is simply go find customers. The reality is, though, if you've got a sales team, and most in that B2B space, those salespeople are spending 60 to 70% of their time prospecting and doing outreach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a marketing function. That's a marketing function. And so what you've done is you have misallocated marketing dollars into your sales channel, and it's incredibly inefficient, and it's incredibly, increasingly ineffective. Salesforce, SalesLoft and HubSpot have done studies over the last 5 years that show that the number of outbound communications in the B2B selling space have grown by 5x.
Wow.
There are 5 times many more emails, in-mails, LinkedIn connection requests than there were. And the response rates, not surprisingly, have dropped by about 5 times.
Basic problem is that the business owner looks at marketing as a black hole, and they don't know what to spend it on, why to spend it. And what they're doing is they're misallocating their spend. They've got salespeople that are spending 60 to 70% of their time outreaching and prospecting, and those are marketing functions. And as communication has increased, HubSpot and SalesLoft found that the number of outbound messages has grown by 5 times. Response rates have dropped by 5 times. It's just incredibly crowded. AI has really crowded all of our in-mails. So our ability to punch our way into the consideration set through the sales channel is really limited. So what I'm telling these folks is, you got to get serious about helping clients find you rather than you spending all your efforts trying to find clients. And they think, well, I can't afford that. Well, the reality is you only need to be world famous in a really small target market.
Right.
You've got to be pumping out content and thought leadership, things that are going to lead clients when they become aware, right? Any given moment, only 5% of the people that could buy from you are in the market to purchase from you. So you've got to invest money in the 95% that are not, so that when they enter the market, you're in the initial consideration set. There's a series of McKinsey studies that showed that the marketing funnel is not linear anymore. Back when I started out in radio, you'd start out with 2 or 3 companies in a consideration set of options, and you'd narrow it down to 1 or 2 that you'd go out and try, and then you buy one. Google changed that game, and it became more like a diamond. We start out with those 2 or 3 in the initial consideration set, and then it blows up to 10 to 12 options. So companies are punching their way into the consideration set through SEO, through paid search, and then it comes back down. We try 1 or 2 and purchase one. Well, the McKinsey study showed that the companies that are in the initial consideration set have a 300% better chance of closing the deal than those that punch their way in. And really what it is it's confirmation bias at work. We start with those companies we know and we trust and have some authority in our heads. And we're actually out researching, not looking for other options to purchase. We're validating our decision around those 2 or 3 companies that are there. And it's really 2 questions. Are these companies providing me with all that I need, and are they charging a fair price? And unless these companies really just poop the bed on those 2 things, they're going to end up closing the deal. So in that space, this small and medium-sized business needs to get serious about being in that initial consideration set.
So are they really asking the right questions in that, especially if they don't know what the data says, right? Because a lot of times we don't know where to find that information. And like you said, in the past, it might have been more linear versus now being a diamond. How many people actually know that, or even paying attention to what these conglomerates, how they have actually changed the whole trajectory and what we need to do?
It's interesting. Most of the folks I work with don't even think about it. But when I explain it, they go, oh my gosh, it's exactly the problem I'm facing.
Right.
I'm buying Google AdWords, and yes, I'm getting clicks, but the conversion rate's really low. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you is that if you're punching your way into the consideration set midstream, listen, around 75% of people that are actively in the market in the B2B space have already made their decision. They've already decided who they want to do business with. And again, if that company does what they need to do on a couple of factors, they're going to close the deal. So that click that you just purchased is really a roll of the dice. That the company that somebody has already decided to do business with just fails on their delivery of the features that the person's looking for, or fails on the price they're charging. And so, once again, you ask the question, well, how does the company know what to go to market with? Well, that's that connection back to sales.
Right.
What are your salespeople are telling you about why you're losing deals? What are customers saying that they're trying to get from competitors that they're not getting from you? And how do you begin to build out communication strategies that talk about those problems that customers are buying, right? How do you figure out how to build out a white paper on 5 things you should think about before you install a commercial air conditioning unit? 3 things that you should be aware of when you're out purchasing a vehicle fleet, right? It's not sales material as much as it is buyer's guiding material that position your company as a resource for information. And oh, by the way, the 5 things that you should be aware of when you buy a commercial air conditioning unit probably lean toward the 5 things that you're the strongest in.
So there's something that you're pointing out there a lot of times. I'm just going based off of my own experiences with my clients or whatever it is. A lot of times when we look at sales departments, number one, they're a little further down the rung in some cases, right? They're not heard or seen as often as some of these other places. That's number one. Number two, the other thing that I've seen people struggle with is I know that if I build it, they're going to come regardless of what they got to say, because I know that I feel like that what I want to do is strong enough that it's going to make me $1 million just in tomorrow alone, let alone $100 million by the end of the year. So how do we change that mindset a little bit to understand, one, the importance of that that department and the information that they have, because it's more critical for us to know it than we want to give it credit for. And then also understand like that product that we had, that product or service that we have, as you're stating, may not necessarily be conducive for our community that we're looking for. So how do we change that mindset for both of those?
So, it's one of those things where if you have a marketing leader, if they're not out on sales calls every single month, you're missing out. 2 things happen when you bring your marketing leader out on a sales call. The first, and probably the serendipitous benefit to it is there is no better storyteller for your brand than your marketing person. They're a better salesperson than your salespeople when it comes to telling the story of your company. The second thing is that they get exposed to clients and actually hear what they're trying to get done in their lives when they think of your company and your industry. And it has a profound impact on their empathy toward the sales department and on their ability to create communication materials that are going to help the sales department. So get your marketing leader out there. But the other thing that's pernicious inside of SMB organizations when it comes to sales is that inside of most of them, the founder or owner tends to be the number one business development rep.
Right.
They tend to be the one that's out creating the business.
Right.
They find themselves frustrated because they've got 5 salespeople who just seem to be managing the accounts that they brought in. And they think, I must have hired the wrong person, or I must not have trained them well enough. And I don't think it's either of those. I think what it is that they have never transferred their judgment into their salespeople. Because as a founder and an owner, you're wandering out there. You know everything about the company. You have the ability to alter the value proposition around the specific needs of a company. You have the ability to alter the offering around the specific needs of a client. You have the ability to change the pricing to meet the specific needs of a client. And most of these owner founders have never transferred that judgment to their salespeople and empowered them to go out and make those judgment calls that you need to make as you're creating business. In other words, we've got to make our salespeople owners of their book of business by being owners of the company.
Sean, I don't know, hypothetically speaking, I don't know if I could do that because it's my brand, it's my thought, and I'm emotionally attached to it, so I can't let go, Sean.
Well, yeah, Maurice, here's the thing. That kind of judgment transfer, I do not think any one of us can do on our own.
Right.
You need somebody coming from the outside that can, because your judgments are invisible to yourself. They just are. My judgments are indivisible. I need to have somebody come in and say, oh, okay, here's what you did here. Here's what you did there. Let me codify that. Let me put that into a process that then is repeatable and it's scalable. Most of the companies I work with find themselves in a place where they've grown their revenue to basically the size of the average new customer times the number of hours that the owner has the ability to go out and do business development. So they plateau at 12 or 15 or $20 million, and they can't figure out why they can't get past it. And the reality is that the owner has not scaled themselves. And what they have is not really a business, is they have a job with overhead.
No, you're right. You're right. And I can attest to that because I see some of my clients who are in that exact space right now. They're not understanding how attached they really are and how much they're holding on to what they perceive as power. But, you have to empower everyone else around you. You have to empower your teams, all of them, and understand that in that space, I need to hear that feedback, that feedback loop, no matter on what level it's on, whether it's in the C-suite or middle management, out on the street, whatever that feedback is. We need to understand that is very valuable for us to grow our business and to get over those hurdles, those closed doors. Let's open up the doors somewhat, So a lot of times that part is hard. I've seen a lot of founders having a hard time letting go because they're so emotionally involved. They feel like because I started this because of my family involvement with it, and I'm afraid to lose it, whatever it might be. I've come across so many different excuses to some degree of why I should not let go versus really hearing what people got to say and moving me forward.
Yeah, I think it was Bruce Lee who said that the man who comes to the brook without a cup must cup his hand gently, for grasping at the water will leave him thirsty. And, at the end of the day, what needs to happen, if you own a business and you have a sales team and they're not bringing in deals that you would not have done, you're not scaling. You need to be okay with those deals coming in that are done in a way you wouldn't have done it, because that indicates that you have salespeople that are thinking for themselves, that are making judgment calls for themselves. That's the bottom line. If they're unprofitable, then we coach and we correct. If they fundamentally change the way we operate, we coach and we correct. But if they're simply just deals that we wouldn't have done because of how we view the business, we're limiting ourselves.
Wow.
Right? I always say, listen, my best salespeople always brought in deals that not only had hair on them, but they were flopping around on the desk, and I had to take a small bat and hit them to kill them. Right?
Right.
Those clients ended up becoming our very best partners because that salesperson was altering our value proposition, altering what we were delivering around their specific needs. And the organization, because it was not fundamentally changing our product operations, right? But we were making alterations around that client that the salesperson uncovered.
And I think that's key. I mean, that sounds very impactful. For those of you that are listening, that are becoming entrepreneurs or, whatever state that you're in, place that you're in, please hear what they're saying. I mean, what Sean is saying, because there's probably a lot of things that we're covering up that we don't even realize that, our the wool is over our eyes, so to speak.
I had a radio station in Seattle. We had, I think, 150 or 175,000 followers on Facebook. We had a full-time social media person that was just doing nothing but taking care of that. This is back in 2009, 2010. I'm talking early days of Facebook, and Instagram had maybe just come around. And one of my salespeople went out and sold a schedule of radio commercials and a service contract for us to handle their social media. And that deal was flopping around on the desk because we didn't do that, right? And salesperson looks at me and says, well, listen, we have a social media person internally that knows the platform better than anybody. Does she have an hour a week that she can give to this project? So went over to the promotions folks and I said, hey, do you think Elisa could spend an hour on this one client? Said, yeah, sure. And what had that client, what had he charged that client? $2,000 a month. It was $500 per hour that we were bringing in, right? He fundamentally changed the value proposition, but he didn't disrupt our operations.
Right.
And within a couple of years, we had hired somebody internally in the sales department to manage social media on behalf of our clients because we had an expertise that they didn't, right? I was not happy when that sale came in, but I was thrilled with it 2 years later.
I bet. I bet. Because sometimes we don't see the forest for the trees, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So, ultimately what I ended up doing in 2010 is I built out an ad agency inside the radio stations. So
Right.
we had a creative director, we had social media managers, we had a videographer, a web designer, a couple of multimedia designers who could take in all of what our clients needed and provide them with creative. They could run on cable, they could run on TV, they could run on social media. They could, we could build a new website for them if they needed to. We handled their SEO and their SEM because that's what our clients needed.
Right. I'm going to tell you, I just talked to a client who was looking for those type of services, and it's just about everybody, Vimeo, iHeart, just about every organization right now offers those services one way or another.
Absolutely. Yes.
A little bit of
And
everybody.
we were early on. Yeah. That was at Audacy. And we were the first market inside of that company that was offering services that were completely unrelated to radio. Because that's what we saw our customers were asking for. Because you've got a company that's doing 15, 20, or $30 million in revenue. They have needs that a traditional ad agency or digital marketing agency would fulfill, but they weren't big enough in terms of their spend to really merit their attention. So there was this space that we found, and we had the relationships with these people.
Right.
I had 25 salespeople that had relationships with 600 small and medium-sized businesses in the Seattle-Tacoma metro. And when we said we can handle that, it was light bulbs. And suddenly, by 2024, that market was doing $25 million in revenue in digital. Right?
Right.
We were doing 35 million in radio alone when I got there. So that was an entire bolt-on that absolutely, as radio sales were declining because listenership was declining, that market continued to be profitable because of that shift that we had made.
So Sean, first of all, I just got to say thank you very much for coming on the show. And because I want to leave everybody on that note of thinking outside the box and not understand, and just understanding like, hey, I need to know what the customer really is looking for and what they want versus what I'm providing. Because a lot of times, again, like I said, my emotion could be involved, Sean. So how can I reach out to you, talk to you, and maybe you could coach anyone that's out there how to move from these roadblocks that's in the way?
So log on to strategicgrowthdesign.com. Grab a 25-minute founder's diagnostic with me. I'll walk you through a real quick assessment that you can put out to your sales team. We'll figure out where your gaps are, where your opportunities are, and where we've got some warning flags. I promise you it will be the most valuable 25 minutes you spend talking about your sales and marketing.
And see, I want y'all to listen, because there's something that Sean said earlier on in the conversation. There's some data points that you might need to consider that you may not have considered yet. And so you need that other team that understands that, especially if you don't have anyone on your team that does that. So, Sean, thank you very much for coming on the show. I think that's a key point.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Sure. But, Sean, before I let you go, I got to ask you the question, man. I got to ask you the question.
Ask it.
So, again, think outside the box. We've been talking about that, right? Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Fork in the road.
And would you like to share why?
Yeah. When you choose from 3 doors, you are choosing an object. You're choosing something of material.
Mm-hmm.
When you're choosing a fork in the road, you're choosing a journey. And the joy doesn't come from the possessions. The joy does not come from the destination. The joy comes in the journey.
Well, you know, some people don't like to be outside, Sean.
It's true. It's true.
And you know, but I appreciate that, because a lot of times we think of the destination more than we think about the journey and all the things that we have to learn along the way. Because in my mindset, even though we might have a goal thrown up on the board, but a lot of times we're never going to get there, because it's always going to be something else along the way. And, you know, and that's going to progress us even past what we thought that goal really was, because actually it's something beyond that. So I think that's what I take from what you said, you know, a few moments ago.
It's precisely it.
Yeah. So sure, but I thank you very much for coming on, man.
Maurice, it's been great being here.
And I thank y'all very much for listening to That Will Nevr Work podcast. And of course, before you go, you know, I always have something to challenge you with. This week, I want you to schedule 1 week with your sales leader, your top salesperson, or if you're the founder, doing the selling yourself, with your most trusted advisor, and ask the 3 questions. What exact words do our best customers use to describe their problem? Where are the best deals coming from, and where are they dying? And what objection shows up the most at the finish line? Write them down, every answer, and your next marketing strategy is already in that conversation. And then take it over to Sean. We thank y'all very much. And we'll talk to you a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected, and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?